Drive Sober.
Welcome back to One on One. I'm Jess Brady. I'm joined this month by Jennifer Wenn from Pride London Festival. She's sharing her story with us about her transition and the work that she does in the community. And Jennifer, we were talking a lot in the first segment about your personal story, but I want to talk a little bit now about the work you do with Pride, specifically the outreach that you do in the community with young people especially. Tell me a little bit about the speaking engagements that you've done and how you engage with people.
Well, it started with Riverside United, which is a church I attend, and I was asked to address the congregation at both services on a Sunday to talk about my own personal journey. And this was, about 10 months after I had transitioned to a full-time female presentation everywhere. And so I was a little surprised at first, but I thought about it and I thought, yeah, it felt like something I wanted to do. So I did. And then from there, it has spread. And I was privileged to address the Thames Valley Board's annual GSA conference in 2015, conference of all the GSAs from all the high schools across the board, and a full school assembly at South, a couple of talking book days at Emily Carr Public School. Neat. And there were some others, a grad class in clinical psychology at Western and a group of endocrinologists at St. Joseph's Hospital, and a couple of other Sunday gatherings. And if people ask me to speak, then I will. And it's very gratifying. For me, it's very cathartic. It's always very cathartic and very emotional every time. And if I feel like I'm reaching people, then that makes it tremendously worthwhile. I have had somebody come up to me after the church service and say that they were sitting with somebody and they came in with one opinion and went with another. Interesting. And there was another gentleman that said he had a grandchild that was transgender, and then there are the kids in the schools that either are transgender themselves, or at one of the times at Emily Carr, there was one that came up and said, "Yeah, my friend." Okay. And when you can actually reach people like that, and they can see that somebody is there, and they have, they know there's somebody else out there. Absolutely. That's like them, or like their friend, or like their family member. And I think it helps. I mean, it just speaks to what you were saying before about role models and how when you were growing up, you didn't necessarily have that, and there certainly weren't gay-straight alliances in schools at that point. So imagine, I know you've said in the past in different media interviews that you've done, imagine if we had had those types of resources, how maybe my life would have been different at that point. It would have been tremendously different. I mean, there's bullying now, but the bullying then was ferocious by times. Especially if anybody was perceived as being gay or lesbian, then the bullying could be extreme, and transgender would have been, something beyond the pale. So if there had been something like the GSAs in the schools, it would have been, it would have been very helpful. Absolutely, and that speaks to, you're talking about how people at the church service or at the schools, they look up to the front and they see you, and you are that example of, look, you can do this, you can do this transition and be successful, and you'll have a community, all will not be lost. It's very much like, in some ways, certainly not everyone's experience is different, but you look at pop culture now and you have Laverne Cox from Orange is the New Black, and Caitlyn Jenner, very public transition, what's gone on with her in the last year and a half, 2 years. What do you think when you see individuals like that who are so publicly in the limelight going through this transition that many people are able to do in relative anonymity? Obviously their families and their friends and their communities know, but to have global attention placed on such a transition, that's something that's so personal, that must be, I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Yeah, it's quite something. On the whole, as more people come out, whether it's on a smaller scale or on a very public scale, it helps. It all helps to humanize it. If you can meet somebody, then then it humanizes it when there's somebody right in front of you. If there is a celebrity, then it still provides sort of, it provides a touch point, it provides a role model, it's an indication that they are out there. And the different of the transgender people that you mentioned, they provoke different reactions in the trans community. And even the same person will provoke varied reactions. Yeah, there are the celebrities like Laverne Cox of Orange is the New Black, and she's pretty well known and quite well respected, I would say. Caitlyn Jenner is a more controversial figure. There are some that have a lot of sympathy. There are some that have much less so opinions do vary. She is perceived as having a significant level of privilege.
Absolutely.
That a lot of transgender people don't. She has monetary resources that 99.99% of us simply can only dream of having. That's one. She has chosen to do it in a very public way. Laverne Cox is a transgender actress, but she followed her journey more privately. But Caitlyn Jenner has done it in a very public way. Some people are okay with that. Some people are not okay with that.
Right.
And they think the association with the Kardashians and all that sort of thing, they feel in some ways like it trivializes our...
It's very consumerish.
Yeah, they feel it trivializes our experience, whereas others would disagree with it.
Right. Very interesting, and it's a good point about the resources, because I believe Laverne Cox has said in certain interviews, you know, I understand completely that I have a different experience from many others, right? So, and that is something that obviously would be very personal for people who are just everyday people who are going through this transition. It's emotional, a physical transition, and it also takes a toll on your pocketbook to be able to go through this process and become who you feel you are, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are many transgender people that are near or below the poverty line. A lot of people do not have jobs. They may have lost jobs. If they're in between, they aren't getting hired by anybody. And so they end up on one of the support programs, Ontario Works or ODSP or something, and they don't have very many monetary resources at all. There's a lot of people in that category. And then there are others that I'm fortunate to have a good job, and there are others that work. But we're not made out of money. We don't have the kind of resources that a Laverne Cox or Caitlyn Jenner would. Now, we do have more than some of the other people that I know.
And it's interesting too, you know, you've talked about how you spoke to medical professionals, you know, grad students, you know, different doctorate programs. It's good that there are those types of programs out there that are interested in getting that feedback to learn more about the experience. I know there was a program at Western that worked specifically, I believe, with med students in terms of educating them in different trans issues, like what problems transgender people may face if they go to the ER for treatment. That it's not as cut and dry as just you have a bad cut, or you know, if there's an actual internal medical problem, it's very complicated for people, and you know, it's something that people who are cis, as you said, would not necessarily consider because it's not in their frame of reference.
No, it's quite different, and there are other, you know, there's some other quite good transgender speakers and people in the city that are doing similar things to what I'm doing, and there are people that are quite active in trying to build awareness of it. And yeah, medically it is quite different as a transgender person. As a trans person, for instance, medically, I have a prostate gland. I will, unless there's some medical reason to remove it, even though if I were to be medically examined, you wouldn't know. It might not be obvious at all. And so there is a certain, and there's a medical part to it. There's also the fact that you're on hormones probably. Right. And if you're on hormones, then what does that mean? A lot of people aren't sure how that means, and the bodily changes that you go through. And the ID stuff that we mentioned, there will be people who are presenting in their felt gender, but they're actual paper work is still in the old gender and possibly, and with the old name and possibly an old picture. And that can be very awkward. And some people have a good experience with medical professionals. I typically did, but I do know people that have had very, very negative experiences with medical professionals too.
Right.
And they have had people that insisted on calling them by a name that they did not want to go by and that did not match
Who they are.
and who they were presenting as. Yeah, so awareness needs to be built. Yeah, for all. Yeah.
And it's good timing then that we are in a Pride Month and Pride Week is happening in this vicinity of time, and it must be a really nice uplifting time to see so much support in the activities that go on with Pride, the parade. I've taken part with Rogers for a few years in doing different activities and filming, and it's just always an uplifting atmosphere. And what's your feeling when you take part?
Well, Pride is wonderful, and it's a time when I hope that all the various communities, the different, the diversity in sexual orientation and diversity in gender identities, that all those communities can come together and provide a more unified voice. It's a time to celebrate who we are. It's a time to make a public statement that we too are a normal part of human diversity and would like to be cherished as such, as like anybody else. And in this day and age of Orlando, the mass shooting there, and the ongoing murders of transgender women all around the world, it's also it's important on another level too.
Absolutely. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure speaking with you and hearing your story and learning about your experience. Thank you so much for joining us. That is another episode of One on One. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.